Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Wisdom Wednesday for this week. So remember, with our Wisdom Wednesday, this is just a generalized spiritual discussion where I go ahead and I pick a spiritual tool that I believe that can really help us with the energies that we are currently working with. So if there are questions or comments or concerns that you have about our topic, please feel free to ask them. If you do have any other questions, then you can always, of course, message me, or you can go to my website as well, which is awakeningmiracles.org, which is in the description. And if you're not able to catch the whole entire broadcast, if you want to go back and listen to something that I said, no worries. You can either come back here to Facebook or you can go to my YouTube channel, which is also in the description of the video for today. So when it comes to today's tool, I'm really excited to talk about it because I get to share a personal parable, which is just a personal story about today's topic. So that's actually where I really want to start with today's tool, is with that personal parable, because from that personal parable, it kind of opens up and explains the tool as well. So I would say when I first started opening up to my intuition and really getting into it, because I was seeing, the interesting results of really tuning in and allowing myself to be guided, really listening to those gut feelings and seeing the progress and seeing how my life was shifting, how it was changing just by listening to this small, still voice. And so I had a friend of mine who was also just kind of opening up to their intuition as well. And so we had agreed to go meet at a Starbucks, I believe. Yeah, I think that's where we were going to do our first meeting, because either her or I had gotten Sonia Choquette's course about like trusting your vibes, or maybe we had the book. I don't quite remember. I think we actually had the book and we had the online course that went with it. So we were super excited, couldn't wait to start. We meet at the Starbucks, we sit down, we start talking about just a few of the things, and then we get into like the video for that lesson. And the video for that lesson was really interesting because Sonia invites us to really get honest with ourselves. And that's always, if you've watched any of my videos before, you know that's something that I'm really big on, is honesty with yourself. Because you have to be honest with the way that you feel, and you have to be honest with what you actually think. So that way you can really start to see, am I a vibrational match for what I'm asking for? Or does this phrase, does this affirmation, does this feel right to me? And if it doesn't, that's okay. It doesn't mean you're wrong. It doesn't mean you're bad. It doesn't mean you're a terrible person. It just simply means those words or those frequencies are not in alignment. And so all you have to do is find the words, find the frequencies that are in alignment with you. And that's where that honesty comes in. So Sonia asks us to be honest, like, why do you want to be more intuitive? Why is it that you want to tune in to your intuition? And then this is what she had us do. And of course, I believe the course was probably meant to be done like by yourself, but of course, my friend and I were doing it together. And so she had invited us to basically get something to write with, and which, I believe is a very powerful thing, writing something down. It's great that you have a knowledge of it, like you have a thought about it, or you have an inspiration that comes to you, but it's really a lot more powerful when you write it down. It doesn't matter if you write it down on your phone, doesn't matter if you write it down on a piece of paper, because once you do that, you're naming it, you're claiming it, and then from there, you can go with the next action step. The ego is really good at telling us, oh my God, this is my problem. Like, I totally see it. I totally acknowledge it. But then it doesn't do anything with it. It's just like, yeah, that's the problem. Okay. And it just leaves it. And that's why writing it down is so important, because that way it's physical. It's no longer just a thought. It's just not just an idea. It is your thoughts given physical form. That's really what words are, in my opinion. They are frequencies given physical form. And so once you see it, you name it, you claim it, and then you can start to deal with it. And so she starts with saying, give me your most egoic reason of why you want to be more intuitive. And so I remember, and I'm not going to lie to you and be like, oh, I only had the most altruistic reasons, because I didn't. Once again, if I can't be honest, then why even tell the story, right? And so I remember trying to keep up this facade for my friend and be like, oh, well, this and that. And then, but none of them really felt right. And I didn't feel like I was getting anywhere with the tool. So I was like, okay, I have to be really, really honest here. What is my most egoic reason? Now, what is an egoic reason? Well, the ego is all based on one thing, which is the idea of separation. So I want to be bigger, better, badder, more than, anyone else. Or I want to be, quote unquote, and this was mine, I want to be special. Like, that was my whole thing. The reason I wanted to tune in more, my egoic reason, was because I want to be special. I want to be seen as special. That's what it was. And so, and it's not just for intuition. You can use this for any dream that you have. You can use this for anything at all. It doesn't matter what it is. But that was my main egoic reason. I wanted to be special. And so then from there, she asks us to, and I don't think it was just one egoic reason. I believe it was 5 egoic reasons of why you want to, tune in or do more. And so, but that was just like my number one. And I remember just being like, yeah, I want to be king of the psychics. Like, that was my whole thing. I wanted to be special. I wanted to be the most tuned in, the most turned on, the most tapped in. That's what I wanted. And so then she asks us to write down our most altruistic reasons of why we want to tune in, why we want to gain our intuition. And my number one that came straight to my mind was, I want to show people how wonderful it is to have a life that is guided by spirit. Because I was seeing amazing results, and I wanted other people to see that life doesn't have to be hard. Life doesn't have to be full of suffering. I wanted to ease that for people by showing them another way of being, another way of thinking. And so me and my friend, both got to do that. But I will never forget that tool. And it is something that I use to this day to really start defining my motives. Like, if I have an inspiration for something, or I have a dream about something, I want to make sure that I am aligning with the truth of who I am. I'm aligning with love. I'm aligning with all of that. That's what I want to align with. And I want to make sure that I'm steering away the best that I can, steering away from any egoic reason for doing something, whatever that may be. Because, there's going to be egoic reasons. And when we write them down, when we name them and we claim them, that's where all the power comes in, because then we can look and say, okay, why do I want to do this? Or why do I want to pursue this? Or how do I want to begin to pursue this? Because if I do it from my ego, it's always going to be rushed. It's always going to feel super anxious. It's going to feel like I have a deadline. It's going to feel like it's a once in a lifetime opportunity and that it's never going to come again, that I'll never get it. And if I don't take it or do it right now, terrible things will happen. It's going to feel like the weight of the world is on my shoulders, and it's going to feel like I am the doer of it. And if I don't do it, then once again, terrible things will happen, or it'll never come about again, and I'll be, terrible, destitute, so forth and so on. And when we instead decide to align with our higher selves, God, source, angels, guides, whatever you want to call your higher power, when we choose to align with those, or we can even say the altruistic reasons, then we can see, okay, how do I want to move forward in this energy of altruism, in this energy of really the truth of who I am? How do I want to begin to move forward? And how can I move forward in this energy, in this frequency, because this is where I want to go. Because when we try to come from that ego space, that's where things get really complicated. That's another key reason. That's another key when the ego is beginning to take over a dream or a desire or an inner calling, is because it starts to get really complicated. Or you start pulling from the past, or you start trying to project into the future. Our spirit, those altruistic, sorry about that. So those altruistic ways of thinking, they're going to really guide us. Excuse me. Bless me. Goodness. So those altruistic reasons, they're going to lead us where we need to be. And it's not going to be complicated. And it's going to be more like you just show up where you're supposed to be, and you're automatically meeting the right people. You're automatically saying the right things because you're not driven by that fear. You're driven instead by love, by inspiration, by wanting to be of service to others. So when you get this inner calling, when you want to pursue a dream, whatever it is, if it's, to be in a relationship, if it's to create something, if it's to be an entrepreneur, to create a business, whatever it is, check in first. Do this exercise and simply write down your 5 most egoic reasons for wanting to do this. And like I said, be honest with yourself. Don't try to put sunshine, rainbows, and lollipops on it. That's not the purpose of it, because then if you do that, then all you're doing is you're covering up. We don't want to cover up. We want to be real. We want to be honest. I don't want to say raw, but I just want us to be unconditionally honest with ourselves. Because I don't like the word brutally honest, because then that's still kind of like saying I have to be really hard on myself. I want to be unconditionally honest with myself. And I want to be unconditionally honest about my egoic reasons why, and my most 5 altruistic reasons why I want to pursue something. And then, like I said, we want to go back and then we want to see, how am I approaching this in this now moment? Am I approaching it from my ego? Is it feeling super anxious? Is it feeling like it's the end, if I don't do this, then all else is lost? Is it feeling like the last thing I'll ever do? Or is it feeling more like these inspired actions? Because that's how we can really tell when we're following our spirit or when we're following those altruistic views, because we are called. It's not that we necessarily are saying, I have to go do this. It's more like, ooh, I'm feeling really good about this. And it doesn't mean that you're going to necessarily get what you want from that meeting or from that place. It just means that you're feeling inspired to go there, because then after you go there, the next step can be given to you. Where the ego is like, I have to do this and I have to do that and it has to work out this way and, blah, 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 blah. We don't want that. We want to step away from that, and that's what that tool can help us to do. Now, before you start this tool, I will say my biggest suggestion is always, always start here from our heart. And of course, that's very simple. We just take our 3 deep breaths. We breathe in through the nose to the count of 3. We hold it. And then we let it out through the mouth. And then we breathe in again to the count of 3. When we're doing this slowly, deeply, and completely. And then we breathe out through the mouth or through the nose, whatever feels most comfortable for you, slowly, deeply, and completely. And then we do it a 3rd time, and we breathe in deeply. We hold it. And then as we hold it, we let out the ha sound. And that's going to help us to dip down into our hearts, where we can be unconditionally honest with ourselves. And then we can say, okay, what is my most egoic reason? Or if you want to start with altruism, what are my 5 most altruistic reasons for doing this? My heart says. And then you just start writing them down, whatever. And if you want to close your eyes, you can. If you want to keep your eyes open, you can. It's whatever's convenient for you, whatever works for you. And then you do the next part and you say, okay, what are my most egoic reasons for wanting to do this? And then if you want to take this tool a step further, then you can go ahead and next to those egoic reasons, you can write down how you maybe have already started to proceed with actions from that egoic state or from that altruistic state. And then, like I said, we can align with the altruism. We can align with the truth of who we are, the love, the service. That's where we can begin to align ourselves. Now, this doesn't mean that, let's say that one of the reasons you want to do this is because you want to be financially stable. Okay, that's not necessarily an egoic reason. It's okay. An egoic reason would be like, I'm just doing this for money. I'm just doing this because I want to be rich. That's once again where we have to be discerning. And you notice that's the word I use here. I'm using the word discerning, not the word judging, because to judge to me means this is good and this is bad. And that's our judgment. But when we discern, and for those of you that have followed me for any extent of time, you know that discernment means that either this energy is for me or this energy is not for me. And if it's not for me, that's okay. It doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it's not for me right now. Or maybe this relationship just isn't for me right now. Doesn't mean that it won't come back around. Doesn't mean that I can't have it later on. It just means right now that energy is not for me, and that's okay. And so that's something else we want to be very discerning about. And that's why when we do this tool, we're not judging our ego. We're just discerning what are my five reasons for doing it from an egoic perspective, and what are my 5 reasons for doing it from an altruistic perspective. I'm discerning between the two. And like I said before in the beginning, where I talked about how we feel about, or how we feel when we're tapped into our ego, and how we feel when we're tapped in to that source, the truth of who we are and how that feels. There's where our discernment is. If you start to feel heavy or low, we can be sure that's where, that the ego is. And we don't want to be there. And so that is the personal parable as well as the story that I really wanted to share today about today's tool, and how we can really begin to use this to begin to discern, or to become more discerning and even more aware, because that's what I believe discernment does. Discernment really does help us, or does lead us to more awareness, because now instead of just having it a thought in our head, we're having it down on paper. We know, and we know. We can really say, I understand where I was coming from. I can accept that. And I can say, but that's not where I want to come from anymore. Instead of just trying to go blindly and say, well, I'm not sure why this isn't working, or I'm not sure this, or I'm not sure that. I've already written down my motives. I've already written down what it is that's really motivating me to do this. And if I'm coming from, the ego space, I know what that feels like. And I know what the actions are that I'm most likely to take from that egoic action. And then from that most altruistic side. So that is today's video. And I thank you for joining me. I thank you for being here. And I will see you all tomorrow for just our daily post. And don't forget, if you are interested in finding more about me, you can of course go visit my website. And if you're interested in more content like this, you can of course also go visit my website and visit my intuitive tips section, or my blog section, or you can just go to my YouTube channel, where I have tons of different videos similar to this, but that cover different topics. So once again, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you all later.